All right, good. Looks like we've got I don't know how many people are in here, but Graham. Oh, good. Okay. I'll start. Also, okay, we've got the Q&A here. Perfect. Okay, so thanks for joining the conference. I don't know how many people are viewing. It says 3, but I think it's at least 4. Out of 32,000 emails that I've sent, we had 85 registrants for the event, and well, if we're viewers, and that's a pretty exclusive club, I would say. Thanks for checking in. There are some questions that I will answer that were asked in the Crowdcast page. So please ask more questions or upvote the existing ones, and I'll answer them with the questions with highest number of votes first. Before we do that, let's kind of dive into a little bit of a little background. And clearly this is not an amazingly positive event because we're shutting down Kato. But I think I found a positive spin on this. So hear me out. When we started building this product in late, or we were thinking about this product in late 2012. It seemed like an amazing. There was this tremendous opportunity for this type of a service, for this kind of a new communication service, and clearly we were right. We were not the only ones thinking this. But the way Kato went, the way sort of Kato were developed was quite different from everyone else. Unfortunately, I think the product stopped short of our aspirations, what we wanted to see it become. But it grew in an important direction, which is in the direction of supporting remote workforces. I think it's the only product that grew in that direction. And the reason it grew in that direction is because our own company became remote out of necessity. It was just kind of an economic decision, not something we planned to do. But over time, we became pretty strong believers in the distributed model of working. And we also kind of realized, looking back at our previous experiences, how much waste is associated with the traditional kind of office culture, which is almost the same as the kind of factory culture of the 18th century. And there's this kind of main expense in commute time, which was also associated with a loss of quality of life, the requirement to relocate, find housing, be at work in certain hours, which doesn't necessarily work with the kind of work that we do. But there's obviously kind of a substantial carbon footprint associated with moving bodies from home to work and vice versa. And so, of course, as we've been using Kato to build Kato, and we felt that it was working quite well, and we kind of started to believe that the companies of the future, the big companies, would have to become distributed to succeed, because they could scale without kind of worrying about geography. And it's not just about office space, it's also about the ability to hire talent across the world without worrying about work visas, for example. And we kind of think that 2 things have to happen for this. One, companies have to go away with a traditional feudal org chart, so to say, and kind of move probably toward the Zappos and Amazon model, where they, I think, got rid of all managers. And this is important because, if you consider these open spaces, these traditional offices, managers show up to work and they look at all the people and they think, ooh, all these people are working for me, This really, but it doesn't matter. That mentality has to be disbanded first. The second thing that has to happen is there has to be a communication system that is good enough to support this type of a distributed environment. And what was very interesting about Kato, even though it was such a different system from all these other products, it's really the only one that truly stands out. It was pretty much embraced universally by distributed teams. And some of them were quite large companies. And I think this is very encouraging. And this leads me to believe that this collaboration product that enables the remote revolution, it could borrow heavily from the ideas that we implemented in Kato. And I hope that our team could possibly be there to implement the system, but I think we're a ways away, unfortunately. So that's kind of the positive spin. I think we've discovered, by working on Kato and using it, we've kind of discovered a much better way of communication within remote teams. Okay, I'll answer questions now. Let me go. So we've got a few questions. Please keep asking. Still watch this video. Yep. Okay, so are we going to write a tech blog post about how we did Kato? I don't fully understand this, whether it's talking about the technical aspect of how we built it or the story behind the company. But I think the answer is no. Partially because we've written a number of blog posts, and partially because I think it's simply not that interesting. Kato is kind of an MVP. It's always been an MVP, minimal viable product. It's built, very few things in Kato were polished enough to show people, to kind of explain how we did things. I think we did a pretty good job as an MVP, but it was still kind of this very bare bones structure across the product. But I will say that Kato is based heavily on airline and OTP. We don't religiously follow the OTP principles, but close enough to the extent where we were able to do hot code upgrades, and we use supervision trees and all that stuff. We also use Postgres quite heavily. Probably 80% of the complexity of the system is baked into the embedded Postgres code. I see there's a comment. Zapier has some interesting blog posts about similar. That's true, they do. They also have some great writers. Anyway, I think we may. We'll likely write some blog posts and do some conference talks about SameRoom, which frankly is very similar, except much better built. I'll get to that question about the open sourcing. So let's go to the next question. Just to reiterate, blog post, not right now, probably no, but maybe later. What sort of issues we were running into, and any ideas of what the underlying root cause could be. So again, I think this could be taken both from the kind of the business perspective and the technical perspective. I think we're talking about the technical perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong. The answer is we really don't know. This is why we were shutting it down, because we stopped working on Kato and we decided not to investigate. But I can say that when we stopped working on Kato, people actually started joining the platform. So when no one was working on it, it had the peak kind of user base, which wasn't that large. It was probably about, it was like 2,100 users in a day that I saw. That was, I think, the peak, and about 4,000 weekly was our peak audience, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think it's a lot more than some of our competitors, as crazy as it sounds. And of course, Slack is like in space. So essentially, I think we did run into scaling issues, which we could have fixed had we been still working on the product. What we saw was these spikes in CPU performance, with normally with a cluster of two very beefy machines with 32 CPUs. Peter could tell you more, but essentially incredibly good hardware. So essentially, one of the machines would the CPUs, all of them, all 32, would spike for like a minute or two, which would start kind of dropping connections, and it would essentially eventually cause, seems like it would cause some race conditions, which would distort the state of the rooms, which would then cause this off-the-record issue that we all saw. I think the more interesting question is applying the same question with 6 votes to the business. You know, what sort of issues were we running into, and what the underlying root cause might be. And I think, you know, I think it's really competition. Competition, and the fact that, again, Kato was designed to address a remote workforce, and people, at least today, are really more interested in a product that makes office life more fun. You know, and I think this is a big reason why Slack did really well, because it's optimized for having fun as opposed to, you know, efficiency, boring efficiency. What does everyone on the team have planned for the future? I've had a few of these questions like this, and I think maybe my email wasn't clear that we're all now working on SameRoom, which is another product by the same company, by the same people, that has now been live for about 4 months and has more paying customers than Kato ever had. And so that's what the team has planned for the immediate future. And I really can't speak, you know, kind of any farther than that. What I need the team to do right now is to be working on SameRoom. Hi, Andre, we want to help Kato to survive. What can we do? I appreciate this quite a bit. Of course, we all do. There's nothing you can do right now. It's not about money. It's not about, it's simply about the fact that, you know, Kato did not take off for a combination of reasons, and we don't think that anything can be done for that product to take off the way it needs to take off to justify our time. As crazy as it sounds, that's the way it is. There's a lot of successful web services duplicates in Russia. What do you think about occupying a more niche market and so having an opportunity to advance and strike back? So I think this question says, go to Russia, take over that market, and then come back. I think the problem there is that, unfortunately, Russians don't pay for anything. Neither do Indians, neither do Poles. There's plenty of kind of countries where people simply don't pay for software for very understandable reasons. Thanks, Yoav. But I think Kato actually did really well in Russia. That's the one market that we occupied, and everybody knew about us, and we had lots of fans. I got hundreds of emails and probably even thousands of emails from folks over there, and we loved having all those users. But economically, just makes no sense. As crazy as it's, again, another crazy as it sounds. I hope that eventually Russia kind of graduates to the level of the economy that pays for software. That's what I really hope, and India too. So I really don't see that as a viable option. Okay, here's the one question that has been asked many, many times. What's the plan for open source in Kato? And I've actually written down. Okay, so if you get your hands on Kato, okay, this is the source code. To launch Kato as it is today, except running on your own in your own environment, this is what you would need to do. You would need to configure S3, SQS, SES, Postmark, and Bedly, APNS and GSM for Apple and Google push notifications, CloudFront for CDN, Raygun for error tracking for the web, Flurry for error tracking for mobile, You're going to have to set up Google Analytics. You'll have to maintain the 70 integrations or so that we've got going, including Stripe, which isn't trivial at all. If you're going to host Kato in the cloud and you want approximately the same power that it has currently, you'll be spending about $9,000 a month just in fees, like say to Amazon. And if you want to buy your own hardware, you're going to have to spend about $20,000 in machines, plus co-location costs every month. Okay, so that's not doable. No one's going to do this. And the alternative is we kind of outsource Kato, open source Kato, and we have 100 different versions of bad Kato running out in the wild. And that is simply not something we want to see. And if you want a milder example of this, look at what happened to IRC and how many different IRC daemons that are currently like maintained and available for installation. There are dozens. That's not what we want to do. There's a question here from Yoav about what's the plan for SameRoom. I think the plan for SameRoom is to survive. It's a unique product, which is refreshing because Kato was not. We finally are able to charge money from these companies that we always intended to charge money from with Kato, but they ended up signing up for Slack, so now they're paying us money as Slack users, and that's pretty great. But we've got a long ways to go. Our hope for SameRoom, ultimately, we think that we may be able to implement this universal protocol that anyone could kind of follow in order to integrate with anything that SameRoom already supports. We've already done so much work in building this kind of a multi-protocol technology that, again, is not trivial. But if all we have to do is expose, kind of publish a protocol, which is probably something similar to Slack or Kato. They're very similar, even though we've never talked to them. It was convergent evolution. And all of a sudden, kind of this federation and interoperability becomes a possibility. But that's farther down the road. Immediately we have to prove that SameRoom is a business. That it's viable, and our immediate plan is to work a lot more with consumer stuff like Google Hangouts, which we're about to release, Facebook, which we're about to release, Telegram, which we're about to release. All of these integrations are already working in development and in staging. We'd love to get our hands on WhatsApp, but if you know anyone there, and I know the CTO, so you have to know someone. I don't know who you have to know. Let me know. But they're pretty bad with interoperability. And we think that probably working with these consumer products that are proliferating and could lead us down a path of some degree of economic financial success, because lots of companies want the ability to say capture certain Facebook conversations or Telegram conversations, so on. Yeah, that's kind of the plan for SameRoom, and we've been very happy with it. I mean, it's a way better. We learned a lot from Kato. It's a much better product, I think. It's not as fun, but it's more interesting. We plan on doing a lot of conference talks, explaining how it works. Again, because it's interesting. Explaining how Kato works isn't that interesting, because ultimately it's like it's the typical student project, write a chat application. And the devil is in the details. Well, I think there's a few other questions. Let's see, there's regarding SameRoom, do you have plans on trying to keep the market cornered via patents or just the biggest and best? I think patents are evil and not really defensible in the end. I think we'll keep it cornered at the time being for simply just because the technology is so maddeningly complex. However, we're all afraid of a YC startup that launches and announces our product, and then all of a sudden it's popular and everybody loves it. And it's like, even though it doesn't work that well, but we lost. We're afraid of that. So what we're doing right now is making sure that everybody knows about us, that this is what we're doing, that it's really hard. Don't try it at home. And as I said, I want to build this next Kato. Like I've not given up on Kato. It's my dream, and using a different product right now is painful for me because I've lost a tool that I love that was built with this purpose, right, of being more productive. So I haven't given up on it. And I just think that same room is a necessary link in this chain. But it could take a few years for that to happen. Hey, you know what? Slack was really not what you do as much as who you know. There's a question on Quora, and I'm going to post this. I'm going to post this question that I answered. Take a look. You'll find it interesting. So here's one. I need to update Kato. And let me just tell you what the other one is. Okay, this is a good one. The question is, why has Slack grown so quickly? I'm not going to repeat this here, but take a look at this answer. They've done a really good job, what can I say? It's a funny story. When we launched 6 weeks after we started Kato, we launched it with like payments and everything. And we sort of had our first paying customer, which was a friendly startup. And Same Room was also launched in 6 weeks. That's kind of how we like to do this, launch really, really quickly. But a few, like maybe a month into Kato, at the time it was called LeChat, we noticed this company called TinySpec signed up for LeChat and started really using the product. And as you know, of course, we have support rooms for every single customer. And so they started talking to us, and don't read it now. One of our advisors is like, do you know who this is? This is Stuart Butterfield. You better be careful. And I'm like, who's Stuart Butterfield? And we talked to them for a while. I've reread that transcript many times since, where first thing Stuart does is he was like, this is really good. This is the best tool we've seen so far, right? But let me tell you, we're doing something very, very similar. And we proceed to have like an interesting conversation about technology and startups, and agreed to meet for coffee. Of course, we never met for coffee. We went on to Techstars. But I think that, that conversation with Stuart and his team kind of opened up this fascinating window into Slack and the future of Slack. And we had very early signs when this company called Ardeo, which is it's like Kato to Spotify. Like imagine Spotify, right? And that's like Slack, and Ardeo is like Kato to Spotify, although they're still going. I used to work there, so I knew everyone. And as soon as we launched, they had a terrible problem with Skype, and IRC was just a mess. I said, hey guys, could you please try my product? And they were like, well, actually, we're trying this thing called Slack because Stuart Butterfield asked us to give it a shot. And that was, this was the only company that could have asked to try Kato, but they were already there. And this plagued us pretty much for the duration of our existence. It didn't prevent us from raising money. It didn't prevent us from going to Techstars. We underestimated how popular they were going to become and how big all the way through. But I think, at the end, it's an invaluable experience. Imagine having a competitor like Slack. There's no one worse. It's impossible to have anybody. Even Apple might be better, because they don't even know that you exist. Slack did know that we existed, and they were vicious. They would favorite every single tweet that mentioned Kato at the very beginning. Whenever someone was asking us questions on Twitter, they would go in and favorite the tweet so that whoever was talking to us would know that they exist. They seem very great, and nice, but their marketing was insane. I had a friend who ran a really good PR agency. I thought she was super smart. I worked with her, and I knew that we would need some publicity for the chat for Kato, and so I reached out and I said, hey Rebecca, I'm doing this thing. I'm doing this startup. I thought maybe you could help me, get the word out. So it took like about a week for us to reconnect, and she was like, oh, I took a look at this, and my husband is working on something, competitive. And so it took me a while to kind of connect the dots, but she is married to the CTO of Slack, it turns out. It's like, if I thought about it, I did know this, but I'd forgotten. So, so there was kind of an explosion right away. And I think despite all this, we did really well. Kato grew to be a really interesting product. Judging by the emails that I have received, mostly asking for t-shirts, but also, kind of explaining how great the product was, I think we were able to reach a good number of people, even though we've never had even a hint of a marketing program. And that's simply because we didn't know how to do that. All right, well, any more questions? This is pretty interesting. I think the system is working, which I plan on using further for SameRoom to run webinars. So if I don't hear from you guys, I will, oh, okay, hold on. If you do use Kato, you can, if you have some history, make sure you can download your archive. Let me know if it doesn't work. We'll try to fix it. There's no script imported into anything else, even though these scripts could be written. We didn't bother. If you write such a script, let me know. All right, I'm gonna call the end to the Kato Sunset Conference. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for showing up. Wait, Graham asked some questions. Oh yeah, okay, hold on. Regarding, as I've learned from conversations with you, care to tell us a bit about your usage of Fleep? Yeah, it's a good question. Another tool is a replacement for Kato. All right, so obviously we've used Slack, and I really, it's impossible. Especially the mobile apps. I could show you this maybe, but like when I open it up, okay, and I have 26 notifications, and I try to understand where these notifications are, I will never be able to dig this up. I can't find them, and I think that's insane. But the emojis work really, really well. So there isn't really that much animosity towards Slack. We just think it's really geared toward fun as opposed to productivity. We looked at everyone, and Fleep was an underdog, and we want to support an underdog. They're the only small startup left in this space, with the exception of Chad Grape, and I'm not sure how well they'll be doing. But Fleet, they also launched in 2013. I think they've been at it about the same time, maybe a little bit longer than we were. And when they launched, it was a complete joke, but then they really built something kind of interesting. So Fleet has a ton of problems, but it also has some good things about it. For one, we can talk to the team, the Fleet team. We're like submitting, I don't know, 10 bugs every day. They're very responsive. I even signed up for the paid account because I want to have the right to bitch. I like their pricing model. It's really good. I think they're going to get, again, inundated with free users just like Kato did. And I'll tell you, last week Kato had like 300 people show up and start a child porn team, and then this went on for a little bit until someone blew the whistle and we kicked them all out. But why did this happen? Kato is free. Come in, do child porn. That's terrible. And I think that eventually it'll happen to like every free platform. HipChat, no way, because well, it's HipChat. Their search is terrible. HipChat is why Kato was born. It was just, I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, frankly, look, the problem with HipChat is it's like an orphan. They sold it early on. The founders checked out. They've been chasing Slack, meaning they've been making it more fun as opposed to better for productivity. And that is not what we're looking for. So Fleep integrates with email quite well. Which is I think interesting and good. It works with SameRoom also really well. I wish they had an IFT integration. So I'll answer that question, Yoav. How the fuck does Slack charge as much as they do per user? I know the answer, but you know what? Give Fleep a shot. We've been like 10 really happy. I think we've been about 6 out of 10, which is praise from us with Fleep, and we have this hope that it'll get better, and we think that we can really help them out. At least we're going to try. All right, so any thoughts on startup incubators to help make powerful connections, possibly help SameRoom seem to gain? So startup incubators, they're pretty low on the food chain. They're good, especially if it's a good incubator like YC. But you have to understand that Slack, they're like the aristocracy, right? I mean, Flickr is a massively successful product. Andreessen Horowitz is arguably the best VC in the world right now. Stuart Butterfield is a celebrity of sorts, and his Rolodex lists every funded startup in Silicon Valley. No accelerator is going to ever give you this. I think that, and also, by the way, we went through a very good accelerator in Boulder, 2013, Techstars. It's one of the best, especially the Boulder program is really good. And we met amazing investors there as well. So how the fuck, okay, so Slack, right? Slack is this perfect echo chamber. It's a well-funded startup that charges other well-funded startups for its service. You have to pay Slack because you have to have your history, because without history, it's a joke. And at this point, Slack has so many free users that I mean, obviously they're making money, but it may be that they can't even become all that profitable because it costs so much to run the free teams. But yeah, it's maddening. It's crazy expensive. I think that in the future there should be probably a product in the Slack category offered by Google in the same way that Gmail is offered by Google, where it's, maybe it's ad supported, but it's available to schools, to families, to just normal people. And then there's also kind of a Google Apps version that you can pay for, but that isn't, all that expensive. Any other questions? Did I answer your question, Graham? Did I answer your question about startup incubators? Well, yeah. By the way, we went through 2 startup incubators. We also went through Orange Fab in San Francisco. And that was a very good experience because we realized that not everybody knows how to run a startup incubator. Lots of companies think that they need to have a startup incubator to appear cool, probably before investors, whatnot. But knowing how to run an accelerator takes years. It takes experience and dedication. So comparing Techstars to Orange was quite an experience for us. All right. No more questions here. Thanks so much. We'll do this again in the context of same room. If you want to keep in touch, with same room, just sign up. We send occasional emails announcing new features and such. Okay. It's getting late in California, so good night.